Welcome to Step Into the Pivot. We're your hosts. I'm Teresa Conti.
And I'm Ivana Polonio. We talk with people just like you. We have honest conversations about current issues that women and men face and how we pivot to address them in our lives.
This podcast is your companion as you step into a workout or take some time for yourself.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Step Into the Pivot. We're so happy to have you here again. And we are also happy to have our friend, Karen Zander. And Karen, we thank you so much for being here with us today. It really is a pleasure, and I'm really excited for our conversation.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So just as a high overview, Karen is an executive director of retirement national accounts, client advisor at JP Morgan. So definitely in our amazing industry, 25 years of experience, specializing in retirement. So what a great a resume, what a great conversation. I'm definitely looking forward to.
Yes, Casey, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you. And I like to highlight when we have guests who, for me, were so instrumental over the course of my career in helping me feel like I belong and helping me feel like I am not alone as a female in a male-dominated industry. You absolutely were highlight of that kind of, sense of belonging for me many, many years ago when we first met through work. You were in conversations where we were, well, happy to say together, not the only woman in the room, the only two women in the room, in several such instances, and obviously we bonded over that experience. And every so often you would, as we would, get together, um, related to work events, then would have an opportunity to just check in because, there was a simpatico there right from the get-go. You would gently share that there is, something on your mind related to your parents, or I would ask you, how are they doing? And so over the course of, quite a few years, I've had this, honor to witness you walking through your pivot. We've invited you on the show to talk about that topic, and we haven't had too many guests, dig deep into it so far. So please tell us anything you'd like us to know about your major pivot and a series of mini pivots that you've faced over the last, should we say
Life
decade?
does throw you the curveballs that makes you pivot. That's very true.
Yeah.
And the first thing I would say too is thank you for that lovely introduction. And I am honored that you have been my friend through the journey. As I'll probably say many times throughout our conversation here, it was the support of my friends and family and that have really been able to help me get through that. And I think that's true of many people with elder care responsibilities. You never it's very surprising. You always know, oh yes, parents get older and you're going to have to come step in and help them, but you don't really know the extent that you'll have to go through, especially if with different illnesses. So I had my parents, my first encounter with it was my parents were very lucky that they were very healthy throughout their lives. God bless them. My father began having health issues when he was around 75 years old, and that was probably around 2008. And I was a late in life child, so if you're backing into the numbers, I'm not that old. But a few years later, but his issues were more, his body was breaking down, but his mind was still sharp as a tack. Versus my mother a few years later began showing signs of dementia and ultimately Parkinson's disease. So that's, that it's very different types of stresses that come with each of those. And I've always said it was a bit of a slow creep of medical issues over time. And you kind of know it, you're going to have to face it one day, but you don't really know what it's like until you're knee deep in it, especially when it comes to helping someone with the challenges of dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. But like I was saying to you the other day, there's a saying, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But in this case, it's like a marathon running uphill with each mile going steeper. And the plateaus just get further and further apart. And you never know when the plateau is coming. So you kind of have to enjoy it while you can. But it's not easy navigating those end of life situations and decisions.
And since we are talking about a marathon, one thing that I know people who sign up for a marathon do, well, they sign up for it. You're not typically just told to run a marathon without prep. And that's the other word, they prep for the marathon. So can you tell us a bit about that, prep? So obviously this is not something that you didn't sign up for this. And was there something that you would highlight as you're thinking, about that metaphor that you feel like, maybe prepped you or, paved the way for you to be able to, sustain that uphill marathon? And maybe at this point is a good reminder to just, I invoked our careers. I talked about, us meeting through work, but we wanted to, respect the context that we're in here. We are, related to retirement industry, financial services, and obviously all of the opinions and thoughts and conversation here. Those are our opinions and thoughts and comments about our own journeys as women. And Karen, we appreciate you here sharing as an individual and not on behalf of, any logo or any organization. So, thank you for
Yes,
being
thank you for
able
that.
to do that. So this is a disclosure for anyone who didn't figure that out.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, there really was, I was not prepped. I was not ready. I mean, my father's first major medical issue was a stroke, kind of comes out of left field, and I wasn't expecting it. And none of his previous doctor's appointments had shown anything that it just comes up sometimes. So I wasn't prepped when it started, but then over time, I think what helped was my curiosity. I've always been a curious person. So curiosity and asking questions has always been my thing. Or I should say, always been a skill of mine. So that helps when you're trying to figure out multiple medical issues and how they interrelate. And there's, figuring out, understanding the medical establishment and different language, I mean, it's English, but they spoke in English, but it was a different language and different acronyms versus the banking world that I am and the capital world that I'm so used to. It was a very different language, but once you started to get the language, understanding how to then communicate back in a way that you were able to help advocate for my parents with their medical choices and their decisions, and asking the right questions to get to the information we needed to make the right decision. So asking a lot of questions and being really organized, which over time, the things that we learn in our careers actually do help us to some degree in organizing other things as well. Or just as women juggling many, many things, which I think a lot of us, I relied a lot on my friends as well to help me figure out different ways to juggle multiple engagements at the same time. So I don't know that I was really prepared, but you learn quick. And I'm still learning. Even, a lot of things I applied there, I'm applying to myself when I have medical issues. So I learned a lot, or the things I learned with my dad first, and then I was able to apply them for my mom. So it was definitely a learning process. That's made me a better person too, maybe a better patient, maybe a better communicator with my doctors. I think I get better treatment because I can communicate the way I do. So.
And probably ask questions, right? Because you really, we've had guests where we talk about how they have to advocate for themselves, right? And push to get the right diagnosis. And you're doing that for your parents, right? It becomes a very interesting process. We moved my husband's dad to Phoenix from Tennessee because he was living on his own. And even though he's in fairly good health, other than having type 2 diabetes is really his biggest issue, but it was a retraining him to eat better and take care of himself and figure out how to do that. It's a lot of those pieces that, that really then you sit back and you think about, and you said this, Karen, that then you got to do for yourself too, right? It's going to make you better and make you think about that. So I love that you talked about that. I think more people are going through that than we even think about, or will be going through that in the next few years, right? As we all get older, right? And our parents are there. And then, we're going to have to figure that out for us too, at some point. So talk maybe a little about how that helped in your personal growth, your mental and emotional health journey. Because there's a lot of things that go on, a lot of things that happen when you're faced with some of this.
That's very true. Very true. There's such a strain when you balance caregiving, personal life, your mental well-being. That was probably, especially when things got much worse and the volume of doctors' appointments and decision making and things kind of all came to a head, all at a very similar time. I always have been a do-it-yourself type of person. I just get it done. No matter, I'll find a way. I'll work the extra time. I'll get it done. So I've always been very self-reliant, and not big on asking for help. And it was a humbling time when I realized I absolutely cannot do this on my own. I'm trying to do everything myself. I'm making a mess of it. And, and I need more than just a conversation on the phone. I need someone in here to help me every day, or at least for this week or two, I need someone here to help me every day. Thankfully, I learned to ask for help, and I learned not to be ashamed of asking for help, because you can't do everything on your own. There's some things, no matter what kind of Wonder Woman you are, there are some things you're just not gonna, it's just too hard to do on your own. And you do it better. And that's what I would always tell myself that too. You'll do it better and you'll care for them better if you enlist more people in the search. So one of the people who was critical for me was my best friend. We've been best friends since we were 3 years old. She looked at my parents like her parents, they were all very close, and she could come in a heartbeat, and lived close by. So she was able to come in a heartbeat to help me when I needed. So, other family members and friends were also critically helpful. So learning to ask for help and to accept that help, and not beat myself up for it. That's another thing I'm famous for doing to myself, beating myself up. So there's no one harder on me in this world than myself. And I've learned to be better at forgiving myself too. Because no matter how, all you can do is the best you can do sometimes. And it's never going to be perfect, even though you try to make things as perfect as you can. So asking for help and being kinder to myself when things didn't go exactly how I wanted them to. I'd say that was probably the biggest learning. And it took me a long time to learn that too. I should have learned that quicker.
Well, what you're saying is exactly right. I think we all are so hard on ourselves and want to do that. And I know even wants to say something. I just wanted to say to our listeners too, that I was actually on a panel a few months ago about caregiving. And there is an organization out there that does help people who have caregiving. They're like an advocate for the patient. And sometimes they step in, like if there's dilemmas between family members, right? Let's say you had 3 sisters and you guys couldn't agree. They will step in and help and give the options and give some recommendations. I will find out the name of that. And even we can include it when we post this podcast for our listeners, because I really thought it was very cool and very interesting. And you had your best friend, and that's awesome that a lot of times we do have somebody to help us. But what if you don't? Or what if there's problems between the family members when you're trying to figure this out, right? It gets a lot harder, and it's hard enough to navigate, much less have all these other factors. So I'll find out that information and we will post it as part of this podcast.
Absolutely. I was lucky too. It was me and my brother. So I have one older brother. And we were pretty much in lockstep when it came to understanding what our parents' wants and needs were, and he backed my play. So and told me when he thought I was wrong. We have a good enough relationship so we were lucky that way. But that can be very challenging when you have multiple siblings who all care a lot for the parents and want to do the right thing. It's hard, and some of the decisions aren't easy decisions, and I and doing what we do, like planning for retirement. It's all about planning, and I would have these conversations as I saw my parents getting older. I sat down with them and I discussed with them, what do you think if this happens? What do you think if that happens? And so I really did know, because I did ask them and they did express it to me. But that was then, and then that, fast forward 5 or 10 years when it started getting towards the end, especially in the case of my mother with the dementia and Parkinson's, she was there, but she wasn't really there, right? So it was a flattening of her personality, and it was a flattening of her cognition. And, I think I know what she wanted. And I would, whenever I wasn't sure, my brother and I would discuss it, and we would mutually agree what we thought the right thing would be. But, it's very hard when you're the one making that decision, when you're the one standing in the hospital hallways, having to decide, is this the time when your father goes on hospice care, which means they're not going to do any further message to try to fix this latest issue. And you're the one there in the moment, and you're making the decision. It's very, very hard. It's hard to decide which medical issues do you treat. That was one that really hit me hard, trying to figure out with my mother, you have this issue. She had this skin abnormality, and I'm having the conversation with the doctor saying, this is a small skin abnormality, but to go through all the tests, to do all these things, to have all this uncomfortable stuff done to her for something that's going to take 10 years to kill her. And she's lucky if she has 5 more. Saying no to that treatment and being able to live with yourself. It sounds like, that sounds like an easy calculus when you look at it on paper, but when it's your mom, and what if I'm wrong? What if it's not? What if the doctors are wrong? What if it's not 5 years? What if she goes for another 10? And then this is what gets her. So it's very challenging. With my dad, it was easier because he had the cognition. So even though he was going through these issues, I could have the conversation with him. And I did once. He had an issue with his abdominal aortic valve. And I was sitting with him at the doctor, and I was basically saying to the doctor, how will this, if this ruptures, describe to me what will happen? And I could see my father visibly getting pale, and I was visibly getting pale. But I said, but what are the odds of this happening versus an 82-year-old having open heart surgery and all the stuff that could kill him, But so we decided not to do that, and it was not the abdominal or aortic valve that got him. So that was the right decision. But you don't know that in the moment. So those are deep decisions that sometimes you have to make actually pretty quickly. Some of them you have time, but so that's the thing, is no one prepares you for that. No one tells you ahead of time, and you don't always know, because this will come up out of nowhere. The medical issue comes up out of nowhere, and then split second decide. It's one thing if it's you, but you're deciding for someone else. It's very, even if, and someone you love. My parents were beloved to me. They were the most wonderful parents a girl could ask for. And that was probably one of the hardest things, is making those decisions and praying you were right.
Wow. So you talked about, needing to ask for help and receiving the support and opening up to that. And then I'm listening to you talk about this now, and the word that really comes up for me in summary of this, leadership. You have had to be a leader of this whole process. Yes, you mentioned your brother. He has his own experience. He had to be a leader of his own life and his own experiences. But I also know that, you were at the crux of a lot of these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of conversations like the one that you just, highlighted, or a couple that you just highlighted. So things that come to mind is like, there you are. Okay, asking for help, receiving help, changing help when it's not working. And you're the one stepping into the leadership mode around, managing your own internal state. So that's what would make you a conscious leader. So like, what's going on for me? Am I beating myself up? Am I being helpful? Could I get more curious? Could I get more determined? Could I ask a better question? Could I, can I take into consideration, is this my mom, and certain questions of her are not pertinent? Is it my dad? I should actually ask him to weigh in, chime in right now in real time, right? So all of that is like your inner GPS, working. And then you are showcasing project management skills, time management skills, people management skills, So while this may not have been something that you officially prepped for, I can see how a lot of different experiences and things that you had been exposed to up until then, we start to all right, this I think I heard somewhere that the Gen X, we like our toolbox and tool belt and research. But I like, okay, so like I hear you and see you here with your toolbox. Like, let me pull something out. I've got a resource here that might be helpful. And I wonder, A, if that resonates, and B, if you can connect that with that wonderful story that you told us when we had a conversation. You were in the midst of this and you had just lost your dad, but your mom was still, with you. And we were reminiscing about your time working with them at a restaurant. Did you know this, Teresa? That Karen's beginnings, when it comes to her work ethic, those were the questions that I asked you back then, years ago now. That all comes from actually being in the restaurant business with her parents.
I did not know
So,
that. So that's very cool, actually.
Well,
yeah.
technically it was just my mom and my mom's family, but my dad was around a lot. He loved to hang out there. In
Mhm.
fact, he had been friends
Maybe
with my
because of the
uncle,
good
my
food.
mother's brother. That's how they got to know each other in the neighborhood. My father was friends with her brother. But yes, so you're right. A lot of tools in the tool belt that learned over time. And yes, I absolutely get my work ethic from them. Growing up, my mother's family had a Italian restaurant in Queens, not far from Shea Stadium. I know it's now called Citi Field, but I'll always call it Shea. That's for you Met fans out there. Go Mets. So, yeah, I grew up working. I was going to, I was in high school. All my friends were going out on a Friday night, and my parents would be like, "No, you're going to go work first. You can go out after you get off of work." So every Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, I was working. So yes, I learned a work ethic from them, and although I always said, the whole time I was working and going to college, high school and college. Thankfully, the restaurant closed, and my parents retired right after I graduated college. But I always said I wanted a nice job that offered vacation time and very good health insurance, the things that you don't get working in the restaurant industry. So yes, I definitely learned my work ethic from those years at the retirement. But it's funny after they're gone, how the years you spend, and it was a great many years from the first time my father first got sick to the marathon I ran was over many, many, many years. Until most recently, my mom passed away in 2021. That's why I missed Napa that year, because she passed away a couple days before Napa that year. But the hell you go through at the end, and it's indelibly marked and you never forget it. But through the grief and through the other side of it, surprised me how quickly the totality of their lives came back. And you're so focused at the end with trying to make them comfortable and give them the dignity they deserve, and make them as comfortable as possible, and try and get a smile, and try to be present and try to do all these things. And then once all that you go through the grief of losing them, I really was surprised at how quickly that tough part faded back. And because that was at the forefront, that's all I saw. All I saw was my mother as a dementia and Parkinson, and someone I had to help, and someone I had to carry, and someone I had to treat. But as soon as she passed, all the rest of it kind of came forward. Similar with my dad too. And he wasn't as bad. His end actually happened fairly quickly. It wasn't as drawn out as my mom's was. But even for both of them, I mean, I always had the appreciation of them, even while they were living, for the totality of their lives. But even the trauma of what happened towards the end went back, and all the good stuff came forward. I don't know if that's a matter of my heart being at peace, for knowing I and my family and friends did the best for them that we could. Maybe it's part of my faith. Maybe it's just part of my general attitude. I don't know. I wish I had a good answer for which one of those it was. Probably a little bit of all three.
I was gonna say it's probably all of the above, honestly.
Yeah.
It probably is all of the above, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to have peace that you did the best you could for them. And I kind of feel it when you're saying it, that you really do that. And I was thinking, not to get kind of off, because I'm going to ask you our last question, but I was thinking, if that restaurant stayed open, maybe her career would have taken a whole different turn here. but I'm
I'd be a
totally
better
with you.
cook.
Well, I love to cook and I've considered that a few times, but yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sure I would love those hours, but I think it's kind of cool, right?
Art on the feet too.
I know,
Constantly
right?
running around.
Right?
I was the hostess. Can you tell?
Oh yeah, I could see that.
I mean, I did a great many things over the years, but towards
sure
the
you
end,
did.
I was the seating host,
I'm sure you did.
seating host, hostess, whatnot.
But it also gave you that cool connection, honestly. I mean, I think that's what I got from what you said, right? The whole thing.
Yeah.
So
But
as
it's
we
interesting to think about, like, you working with clients, like, and just having that disposition of, making people feel comfortable, because that was your role. And that was my first experience of you when we were working together. This person knows how to make me feel comfortable within this environment that was, was complex. We were discussing things that were, in my job, I had to have good questions about and good curiosity. And you were like, here is and this is what we've got. And, it was just, I can see the
Always
connection
with the
there.
hand gestures. That's the Italian half of me.
I know I think we all have some of that going on this show.
I definitely do. Okay, so thank you for being here today. So let me ask you our last question. So we asked this to all of our guests. So how is this life event that we talked about, this pivot, a step forward for you? So tell us what's happening now.
So many ways. I learned so much from the entire experience. I mentioned earlier how it makes me a better patient, makes me a better partner with my doctor. I really do. And that's my approach is I partner with my doctor on my health. I partner with them to help me put me on the right path. And focusing on self-care. I didn't really focus before. And I have been focused a lot more on that going forward, making sure I take the time. I don't just run myself to the bone anymore. I will take the time to give myself the headspace I need to think about how I'm doing and to make sure I have the time to reflect on my day. I used to do that when I could. Now, I will do that every day and reflect on not just my goals for my career or my goals for my next thing I want to accomplish or my next thing I want to acquire, but my goals for being a better person, being a better, healthier person. And very importantly, being as good of a friend and family member as they were to me. I never would have been able to care for my parents the way I did. That gives my heart that peace that they deserved. They deserved to be together. They deserved that they had all the doctoring and nursing and aiding and daughtering and sonning they needed. I wouldn't have been able to do that without my family, without my friends, and without my colleagues. My colleagues and my managers at the time were phenomenal, helping wherever they could. I mean, I love the group I work with. They're absolutely phenomenal. So that, and also empathy and wisdom. Like the wisdom part we kind of covered, but empathy. I've always thought of myself as a curious person and having a lot of empathy for other people. But this kind of situation is so deep that once you've gone through it, you're going to be marked by it, whether you like it or not. And, but I didn't realize the depth of it. And now I think I'm a better friend to others when that are going through it, because I do understand the depth of it. I can kind of help steer people to, suggestions for getting things done, or helping them in their journey so that they don't have to have the pitfalls and the running into brick walls that I did. So I think that empathy makes me a better friend. I've gotten even deeper empathy than I had before, if that was even possible, but it is.
Oh, those are such deep comments and so beautiful. And, and there is heartache in them as you talk about it. And at the same time, it's uplifting. So it can be both, so special. And I know, we've talked a lot here about, these heartachy and uplifting situations. And it feels to me like, on the one hand, obviously, you're here with us as, in physical form, the only guest, but in some ways, the relationship that you're talking about is still very much alive, the relationship with your parents. I know we chatted a little bit about that in preparation for the conversation, missing them and feeling them present. It's possible, isn't it? To really have like this sense of they're right here with us, even though, we can only see you on Zoom.
I do. They are, and I've always felt that way. And again, I don't know if it's maybe just a factor of my faith or just the way my wonderful parents raised me, but I am both of them. They are both with me always. And even though they are gone, they are with me every day. They're in what I do. I see it in my niece and nephew's faces. Like they are with me. So, and I know they're proud of me too.
I'm sure they are.
Yes.
I'm sure they are. Well, thank you so much. What a great conversation we've had today. We really appreciate you being on. We really appreciate you sharing this story with us. I think it's important for everybody to know and, remember, and, there's others you can reach out to if you do need help, and, we can be that friend for somebody when they need us. So I think that's really important. And I love that part of your story, honestly. So thank you, Karen, so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's always great to share. And maybe I'm hoping this helps someone maybe it'll help somebody who's going through it and feels they're very alone. You're
For
not
sure.
alone. We're with you.
It's so great to hear that. And I so appreciate you being so explicit about it and clear, about that message. It touches my heart personally a lot. So thank you so much. And thanks for our listeners and our viewers and their presence. And as we conclude today's episode, we have our classic invitation for everybody to remember that if you have a pivot, step into it. And if you need a boost, listen to our episodes and get inspired by the wonderful folks like Karen who have done it and keep doing it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Step Into the Pivot. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation. Remember, life is a series of pivots, and it's in those moments of change that we truly grow.
If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected, make sure to check out our websites. You'll find additional resources, behind-the-scenes content, and more details about our incredible guests. We love hearing from listeners, so reach out with your thoughts, questions, or your own pivot stories.
To keep the conversation going, be sure to follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn and Instagram, where we share updates, quotes, and engage with our amazing community.
If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback makes a difference, and it helps us bring you meaningful conversations. We're signing off, reminding you that every pivot is a step forward. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Step Into the Pivot.